So my idea today is to do the upper torso. And one of the things that we have to keep track of is part of what drawing is doing is it's teaching us to simplify and express what might be really complicated forms. So human anatomy is really interesting. It's like it's a necessary evil. It can be extremely complicated, and also there's a kind of history of really brilliant simplifications that's absolutely worth studying and understanding. And so it's a little bit the work of a lifetime. And in Foundations to Drawing, let's just go back to, we'll start out with our warm-up. And my commitment to you guys today is to really stay to the 30-minute deadline. Here is a simplification that starts to suggest a torso. Same as the torso above our head, above our eye level. In yesterday's lesson, part of what I'm trying to get us to understand is I'm trying to get us to understand this point that lives in here. There's a point that lives in here, and I was approaching it through the idea of an X, where you have the top part of the torso and the bottom part of the torso, and they have this moment of flexibility. So we could express a torso like this, and we could express it like this. With that little point. It's turning out to be one of the real breakthroughs for me in drawing has been this simple move of coming up with a place. Say you have an ellipse, which is a relationship, a set of relationships in space, and if I come up with a place and a place and a place and a place that are correlated, and I start generating associations through a curve, right? The ability to create naturalistic and complicated form seemed to really expand in my own practice. And so in our generating of the pelvis, I was working with this kind of thing, a curve that begins and ends. And the same on the other side. And before I could do that, frankly, the compound curve of the pelvis was just too hard for me to, it was too hard for me to really understand, definitely too hard for me to teach. So while it would be nice for us all to come away from class knowing more about drawing people and being more expressive, communicative, evocative in our drawings, largely the tool that you come away with really is the ability to solve complicated shapes through a very simple means. And these complicated shapes then are an avenue for further study for you. So the rib cage also has sets of relationships that we can understand. We can simplify relationships in the same way. So if we just have this shape, and of course that shape doesn't have to be expressed with so much complexity. That shape can also be really simplified. Like that could be a rib cage shape. One of the things that I thought was cool was when we do express this like this, and we've got this point here, by hanging the hole for the neck where the rib cage ends, because it does so happen that it's not like an olive. The rib cage is like that, and then it's not like there's this little hole in the very top of it. Really what happens is the hole is kind of, if there's this, the neck emerges from a hole that's more towards the front. And when you have a torso that you're looking at in side view, a person's head has a tendency to go like that, which makes sense because that's where the hole for the neck is. So that's really nice that we can find a spot for that. That also creates a center line, which is the breastbone. And if I go to the back of this, you see how this got smaller? But if I go to the back of this, so there would also be a center line running the back of this shape, and that would necessarily be where the spine is. So the spine would be inside the shape like that. And the ridge has this really extremely cool arch, and it's a little complicated, but if I think of a point here and a point here, and I drop below this, and then I make my way back up to there. So I drop below this line and make my way back up to there. And then I find myself a spot on the other side and drop below this and curve around to that spot. Once I've gone below, I'm coming around and looking for, and that becomes a fairly realistic representation of the bottom cavity on the rib cage, which is really neat. Now that shape, once you can draw it, you can start to simplify it. You could say, well, it's like a Pringle. It has this, I'm starting to think that Pringles have some kind of universal quality where it would be good for us all to learn how to draw Pringles. There's something like this. I'm experimenting with a new grip on the pen. It's like a Pringle. However, the front end goes up much higher and the back end goes lower. So if I take a Pringle shape in here, and that's going to take me some work to be able to really get that, but it would be living here too. I like the way these curves create access in 3 dimensions in ways that I haven't had before. I like that. So there's a kind of Pringle type shape in there, and believe me, I recognize what I'm talking about right now is something that's really kind of advanced. So like, let's take this one and say we have a center line that's about here, and say we have a center line that's about here. So really slowly, we could take our center line, project it through to the back, understand that the spine would emerge from there. We could, from either side and either side, look for its, actually this one has to move down. So the rib cage has one more ellipse associated. And these live on that. And all of this stuff is out of view. And starting from here, the top, we come over and down below this, and then wrapping around, and we find that. So we come over, down below this second line, wrapping around and going back. And so this forms the arch of the rib cage that we're looking up into. Let's try another one. So to begin, I need that. And a center line. And then at this first ring, 2 sides, and here's the center on my back, and there's the center on the back. And so I drop down and up and around. I drop down and then up and around, and I connect through. And we're approaching one component of an extremely complicated mechanism here, the rib cage. It is, however, a beautiful shape, and it's worth studying. It's worth having some command over. Let's make an effort here to kind of simplify. So let's say you have a process of drawing a torso. It could be as simple as our Tin Man. And from what I've told you now, you might recall, but without having to take it as far, you could recall that the rib cage, the front of it is about there, and the back of it goes down, and so you're just thinking of this curve in here. And then the curve goes the other way too. interesting curve. And if this is a rib cage, and if you come up with a center line for the rib cage, and then just from the center line, you'll recognize that there's this curve which is making its way around to the back. And that's something really nice. And so if we have a very, very simple torso again, with like an X. So we just have a little X. Someplace in here, we're coming to understand is this curve. And so whether or not you're thinking about it like really 3D, or you know that there's that little shape is in there. And if you had like a peanut drawing, which can also become a really nice torso representation. Here's a peanut drawing, just the leg bones. But this part of the peanut drawing has a rib cage right here. And you kind of know that the head is going to be coming out in that direction, and there's a rib cage right here. So it fits into a more complicated model, and it's just good to know, even if you're just working in a really simple model, however it is that you're approaching this stuff. So the next thing that's really cool, the next thing to really start to talk about on the front of the torso is this line right here, which is the line of your clavicle. And it goes from here, and it goes from here. And if we're going to look at it really flat, it goes like this. And we can get it off of this. We frequently will draw an ellipse up at the top, and there's a line that comes across, and it looks like a bow and arrow. It looks like this. And if we go here, here it is in 3D. And here's my center line, and here's a side point and a side point. And that's our clavicle. And it sits here, and it goes out, and it goes out like this, and it comes out like this. And to construct the front, so this is sitting in here, and it comes up and out, and it wraps around, and it comes up, it goes back, right? So you can see it goes back. So if you're going to be looking down at the torso, like say I have a torso right here that I'm looking down in, here's the clavicle, goes like this. Again, a compound curve, because notice also how it goes down that way, okay? And so those, along with the bones of the pelvis, form the major bones that you need to know for the front of the torso, that's for sure. Here's my pelvis. There's the pelvis, and there are all kinds of, we had like kind of clever ways that we constructed a pelvis yesterday. But essentially you can see, we can also conceive of it more simply. And the bones of your pelvis live there. So the front of the torso has a couple of major muscle groups that are good to know. There's the pectoralis, and the pectoralis is shaped like this, and goes like this and like this. And so I've got right in here, there's a muscle, and it attaches over, and it attaches really to the arm, and it attaches to the clavicle, and it attaches here. And it's shaped like this. And it goes on the other side. And there are a lot of cool different ways to think about the pectoralis. Like if we, let's say we pull that out of context. This is kind of how it looks. Like that. It's connected to the arm there, to the breastbone there, to the clavicle here. You can almost get a sense of why the clavicle is pulled down the way it is. It might be a billion years of the pectoralis pulling on it. But that lives right there. And here's the pectoralis. And it starts here. And it connects in here. The next most important muscle in the front of the body is the abdominal muscle. And the abdominal muscle goes from here to here. And it goes from about here. And it sits over, it comes over like this and grabs on. So it has this shape like this. And then it's split down the middle. And this is where it grabs the ribs. And this is the middle section. That's the belly button right there. Okay? And so it goes like this. And one thing that's cool is to give it a 3D effect. Like that. So it sits, it grabs hold right here, comes down, up, and hits the belly button, and then back out and down, and it grabs the pelvis right there. This part here grabs the pelvis right there. So it goes boom, boom, around, and belly button, and out and over, and out and over. And we can 3D it. And it sits in here, we'll draw it real flat. It sits in here like this. The center line. Okay? And the next muscles for us to think about are the obliques. And the obliques go from here up into here. But when they connect in here, they connect on a line. Like, so if you take a point in the front and a point in the back and you go like that, and they connect along the top of the rib cage, and so they go up like this and they connect on that line. And one thing that's really neat is if you make X's across it like that, that's how they connect into the ribs. So if you think that you have, so you take a line, say from here, and you almost like echo that line around the back, and that's going to be the connection point, and you can do it on both sides, and that's going to be the connection point for the obliques. And if you do X's crossing it, like little X's going back, crossing it, and then the obliques connect into there, and they'll be right here. So this comes really down like that, and like this line, it goes over like that, connects into the top here, rides up, and I want to do little X's crossing it like this, boom, 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 and that's how the oblique connects into the side plane of the body. It's really, I like that a lot. And then you have another little guy right in here, and I don't expect you guys to memorize all this stuff. I'm just kind of trying to run through the front of the body. Okay, so you have this guy, and then you have the oblique right there, boom, like that, and then Xing in, and then Xing in, okay? And then you have this thing that's like a little claw. It's shaped like this. And it inserts into those, and it's a muscle right in here, and it's a serrated muscle. And it comes right in here. It's this lump, and it connects in with all of these. Boom, boom, like so. Boom, boom, like so. Serrated. And then this is a muscle we'll talk about a little bit more later, but it's the latissimus muscle, and it comes around like this, and it covers a serrated muscle. And it comes around like this, and it covers the serrated muscle right there, and it connects around the back. So over here we might see part of the serrated and then part of the oblique, or part of the latissimus muscle, and it actually connects into the armpit. So it lives right here, and it goes up and connects into the armpit. It lives right here and goes up and connects into the armpit. And when we draw the back, we'll see more of that. So here, if I add my obliques, which come boom, 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 this is just a diagram. Down, serrated muscles connecting in that way. Lats, right like that. And that's pretty much the front of the torso. Now, if you're drawing a woman, then what you can do is, there's a cool move. Here I'm going to show you like this, and then we'll be done. I'm just going to lighten these real quick so we can, if we were trying to draw a woman, one of the things that we would have needed to do is have the hips be bigger. But if we took those hips and made them bigger, and this would shorten up just a touch on the pelvis. It goes wider this way and a little shorter this way, okay? And our shoulders would have been a little bit smaller, so we can just bring our shoulders in just a touch. All the pectoralis, everything is exactly the same, but what you do is come up with a contact point, and here's a contact point, and wrap around to here, okay? And draw a curve that goes like that. And do the same on the other side, and I'm drawing a curve out. Then you can come up with a point and draw a curve up, okay? And you can come up with a point and draw a curve up. And now you can see the connection point of the breast, like here and in underneath there. Oh, that's my time. And then you can see that. Okay, so I want to do it one more time. So and then you can draw different, there obviously is many types of development, but if you it's all essentially the same: a point, a point, a point, a point, and a line that surrounds, and a line that surrounds, and then I go from underneath to over, and I pick a point where I want a connection below, and up and over and around, and up and over and around, and this shape you can find a spot where you want to place the nipple, and that's how you do that. Okay, let me know how this works out for you guys. It's a lot of information, and I wish I could draw it more cleanly in my examples to you. It's kind of a goal I have, but at any rate, that's that. Okay, thank you guys. Have a great afternoon.